In the September 2022 Nintendo Direct, Fire Emblem Engage was revealed to the world as the next main Fire Emblem game. If you include the two Warriors games, Engage makes for the fourth new Fire Emblem game on Nintendo Switch, and I am stoked. I've been a big Fire Emblem fan ever since the GBA days when I first borrowed my neighbor's copy of FE7. Since then, I've gone on to play every installment available to me, and then, through some creative means, even a couple more. In this video, I want to talk about some of the stuff we have seen so far and why it excites me. And just to set some expectations up front, I'm not so wildly excited that I can't see some of the goofy stuff in the first few trailers.
I was able to answer your call because you remembered me.
But I have seen enough of the game to honestly get pretty jazzed, and I just want to give my thoughts on what we've seen so far. I'm basing most of what I say here on the first two trailers of the game and then a little bit of speculation and observations from some of the Twitter gameplay clips. And just as I was finishing this video, another trailer seems to have been released, but at the time of this recording, it's in Japanese only. I have not had a whole lot of time to fully digest this one, but I imagine the English version will drop any day now as well. And I'll give some top level thoughts on what I saw, but nothing too deep. Now I do fully expect some of the stuff I say here to eventually be dated and maybe not 100% accurate, but hey, what are you going to do? The game isn't out yet. New trailers are going to keep coming out with more clips to parse info from. But with all that in mind, let's get rolling. The first thing I want to talk about is what I come to Fire Emblem for, the gameplay. There are a few topics I want to hit here, but let's start off with a simple one. It looks like the weapon triangle is back in full force after taking the last couple games off. Well, kinda. Three Houses had some skills that sort of replicated the weapon triangle, but that really isn't the same thing. Anyway, for the uninitiated, the weapon triangle is basically rock, paper, scissors with sword beating axe, beating lances, beating swords. It is one of my favorite gameplay systems in all of games, so yeah, I'm pretty amped to have it back. It may sound a little silly to be that excited for medieval rock, paper, scissors, but man, I guess you just don't know what you have until it's gone. The next mechanic I want to talk about is a new one, and it seems to be the crux of both the story and the gameplay, the titular Engage mechanic. Through magical story reasons I'm sure will be totally well explained, there seem to be 12 rings you can get to summon Fire Emblem heroes of yore to help you out. Now, story implications aside, I think this could be pretty neat. Each past character gives some additional skills, stat buffs, and what looks to be special attacks to help you out. I don't know if there's any limitations or drawbacks to using these, but they seem pretty important, and if past game-specific mechanics are anything to go off of, pair up and battalions come to mind, they'll probably be pretty strong. This new trailer I mentioned earlier did seem to focus primarily on how engaging with different characters gives some unique skills for each emblem. I haven't had a whole lot of time to digest all the content in there, but I saw enough to kind of get a feel for what's going on. Basically, the emblems are going to be real important. For example, Sigurd seems to boost the movement range of his paired character a silly amount, and Byleth can dance for 4 characters at once, a la FE4. Celica can warp, Corrin can make hazardous terrain, it all seems pretty dang strong. I am excited to see what else comes from this mechanic and hope they give some fun options when choosing on how to beat a map. An interesting tidbit from the second trailer is it seems the enemies very well could have the same ability to use against you, so that could keep things fair. I'm guessing you will unlock new characters by defeating whatever evil bad guy currently has that ring and bringing them back to your side. Maybe not, just speculation. But yeah, the Engage mechanic seems like it could be pretty neat. Really, any excuse to have my boy Ike back on my side works for me. Now, I can't really talk gameplay without touching a bit on the newly introduced break mechanic, which is what I really want to talk about the most. Now, I'll be honest with you here, this could make or break the game depending on how it's executed. So, before giving too much of my opinion on it, let me try and explain how this mechanic works first. So in previous Fire Emblem games that used the weapon triangle, the main thing the weapon triangle did was give you a hit bonus if you use an advantageous weapon. A sword against an axe, for example. In Engage, it seems using an advantageous weapon could be much more consequential. According to a tweet from Nintendo, in Fire Emblem Engage, you can inflict a break status on an enemy by landing an attack with a weapon that has an advantage. Broken units cannot counterattack until after their next attack, so you can use it to gain advantage in battle. Now, to people who have either not played a Fire Emblem before or maybe have just dabbled, this seems like a rather innocent of a comment. But to me, and I'm sure many other fans of the series, this caught my attention. Being able to stop enemies from counterattacking until their next attack could be huge. Like, if this is as straightforward as they're making it out to be, this will be central to how you plan out almost everything you do. Now, I don't want to get too worked up on this mechanic until I see it in action myself and can see how the maps are designed and how smart the enemy placements are. And I'll have to give Intelligent Systems the benefit of the doubt here. This could be a pretty big design choice they're going with, so I would think they've given it plenty of thought. But for the sake of conversation, I want to speculate a bit here on how this could be a big deal. Now, first things first, we need to figure out this can inflict break status part of the comment. If this is not a guarantee, things become much more reasonable and could just be a cool little bonus for you if you get lucky. But I'm reading and seeing this as more of a this will happen when you attack with an advantage. In all these gameplay snips Nintendo keeps sharing out, I'm just seeing a whole lot of critical hits and breaks being performed. Maybe this is just fancy marketing to show off some flashy animations, but maybe the break status does just happen every time you attack with a weapon triangle advantage. If this is the case, it could be much easier to get more fragile units to safely contribute to battles without fear of taking chunks off their HP just to get some hits in. I assume enemies will be placed in such a way where you have to carefully consider how you approach still, but being able to be in the driver's seat with the ability to ham-bone a set of enemies for a turn could be really powerful. I do hope that enemies will be able to inflict their break status back onto the player to keep things interesting. And maybe some enemies, like bosses, cannot be broken so you can't just cheese them. I also hope maybe there's a skill or held item that could keep the player character safe from being broken. But all in all, I think break could be a really cool gameplay mechanic if handled well. And if it isn't, then, well, at the very least, well, maybe it could give some opportunity for some cool cheese strats to get through maps without ever being touched. When I first saw Fire Emblem Engage, the first thing that stuck out to me was what it looked like, and to be honest, my first impression was not super positive. I thought it looked, for lack of a better phrase, just a little bit too anime-y. But I've since changed my mind and kind of think my first comments were silly because the game looks great. Sure, the character designs are a little out there and endless toothpaste protagonist jokes made this clear, but at least the character designs have some personality and style choices behind them. Also, the characters just look good. And from what I've seen, this really does look like Intelligent Systems chose an art style and went all in on executing it. The color choices are great, and I bet some of these maps are really going to pop on the Switch OLED. I mean, look at the comparisons between an early game grassy map from Fire Emblem Three Houses, a game I truly love, and what I assume to be an early game grassy map in Engage. There's just no contest to me. Engage looks way more interesting. The UI looks good, and the animations look a little bit more unique, and it seemed to be nice and smooth as well. If there's one section I had to nitpick and say does not look super fantastic, it's the base you'll presumably get to roam between maps, a la Garreg Monastery. Some of these shots of this section look a little suspect, but they also could look a whole lot better once the game releases as well. But hey, if the maps and battle animations look good, which so far I tend to think they do, the rest of the game is of little concern to me. At the very least, it looks to be improvement from the previous game, Three Houses. I love that game and think it looks good in the right moments, but I cannot sit here and tell you that it's always the most beautiful game. But Engage looks to be taking a step in the right direction. To be fair though, Fire Emblem Three Houses did have some beautiful animated cutscenes for the big moments in the game. They were pretty impressive. But from what I've seen so far, I think Engage has the chance to impress me even more. I feel like story in Fire Emblem can be a little hit or miss, which honestly is fine for me as long as the gameplay is good. I mean, I could not tell you what on earth happens in any of the Fire Emblem Fates games other than some really top level stuff, but the games are still fun. I guess what I'm getting at is story is sort of a bonus for me when it comes to Fire Emblem, while gameplay is at the forefront of my attention. The first couple trailers for Engage basically set up that the protagonist, Alir, is a divine dragon who's been sleeping for 1,000 years or something. The main antagonist seems to be this evil purple flame man who either is or wants to control the Fell Dragon, really hitting all of the classics here. Now while this game really could just be retreading old ideas, I think there is room for some fun and misdirection in there. One idea that I've heard some people speculate on is maybe there is some mid to late game route split where you can either choose to become a fully good divine save the day Aleer, or evil scary monster redhead fell dragon Aleer. This idea really came from the second trailer where they showed Aleer in fully red hair instead of the red and blue mix, and looking really spooky and diabolical while doing it. Maybe implying that you could choose to be the bad guy. While this would be a cool option, I tend to think this is more of a flashback to the past situation where maybe you messed up and things went bad, and this time, the time where we play, we right our past wrongs and save the day. This could make for some cool moments even if it ends up being a little bit predictable, but I must admit it would be a really neat idea to let the player choose to be good or evil. The other big story component, and probably the game's main hook, is the one I'm much more excited about, the summoning of old Fire Emblem protagonists to help you out. Right off the bat, you can see this as a cheap fan service and intelligent systems just phoning it in some generic story to get all the big names out there, but I say, who cares? This could be super cool. Now, would it be corny and silly for Ghost Ike, who fights for his friends?
I fight for my friends.
To be there for whatever convenient plot reason to help me? Yes. But do I want to have Ike, Marth, Roy, Sigurd, and every other cool Fire Emblem lord by my side because it'd be cool? Also yes. Sometimes things can be silly and fanservicey and still be fun, and I'm pretty excited to get the chance to play alongside some of my favorite characters from the series. Like I mentioned previously, I personally don't have to have a great story to enjoy the game. That's all gravy for me. If I get to have a well-designed, fun Fire Emblem gameplay, and have fun, dumb fun doing it, I'm happy. So in this last bit, I want to talk a little bit about a couple hopes I have for Fire Emblem Engage. I'm going to stick with the two big ones for me because if I went over all my hopes for the game, I might as well make a whole nother video on this. These hopes are not based on any of the footage or marketing of the game so far, just general gameplay decisions I hope make it into the final game. The biggest one I've been really missing is more diverse victory conditions for the main maps. I feel like the game's been trending towards more and more defeat boss or route enemy objectives as of late. There are obviously examples against this, Conquest being a good example, but I would love to see some all-new ways to beat a map. Maybe even throw in multiple objectives in one map and offer unique rewards or story options for doing certain things. The second hope I have may be a bit controversial, but I would actually like to if the units classes were set in Engage. Yeah, it is fun to customize each character to whatever class you want sometimes, but I feel like in the long run it makes each character feel less unique in combat. If character X is a good armor knight, but I just have the option to make him a wyvern rider, I'm going to be pretty tempted to change their class. And yeah, the counter to this is just don't change their classes, and the more options the better, but I feel like characters have their own niche that only they can fill, and you utilize that niche to help out in a map in a way that only that character can. It feels really good. I think I'd be fine with a class system from Sacred Stones, where each character has two options to switch into upon promotion. This helps the player have some agency in how they build their units, and keeps the playthrough unique while still keeping things pretty simple. So there we have it. Fire Emblem Engage is now less than 2 months away, and I could not be more excited. I'm sure, like any other Fire Emblem game, I will find fun in it whether or not they nail it. I love Fire Emblem, and I'm honestly just happy to see it getting so much attention from Nintendo these days. I hope Engage can help introduce new players into the audience and continue to grow the series. Are you excited for Fire Emblem Engage? Will this be your first Fire Emblem, or you consider yourself a battle-tested veteran of the series? I hope the game can offer options for each side of the fanbase to enjoy. Once Engage actually comes out, I really want to make some videos on it, including a review more than likely. If that interests you, or if you just like the video, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and consider subscribing for more. I talk all things video games and want to keep making more and more videos for people to enjoy. But if all you care about is Fire Emblem, luckily we don't have much longer to wait. January 20th, here we come.